New York Jets fans and Joe Douglas. Is the honeymoon over, guys? It's a question worth asking. Glenn Naughton, JetNation.com, Jet Nation Radio. Thanks for checking us out. Be sure to check out our forums online, JetNation.com. Register, log in, and post on what is the most active Jets message board on the internet. So Joe Douglas, this is something that has to be talked about. I myself started writing an article on this a few days ago for JetNation.com. Saw some of the back and forth from the fans and our forums on Jet Nation, seeing some of what's being said on Twitter, and I thought this would be a better way to sort of work through the current situation with Joe Douglas, what it means now and what it could mean for the future. So a lot of fans are bailing on Joe Douglas because the team stinks right now. This is what happens. When you don't win, fans want heads to roll. In the case of Joe Douglas, however, there was a time, not that long ago, when a good number of fans, insiders, whatever you want to call, pundits, writers, media, whatever you want to call it, there was sort of an unwritten rule that a draft class got 3 years in the pros before you decided whether or not this class was a failure or not. There's adjustment periods. There's getting used to the speed of the game. There's getting used to a new system. There's getting to the point, as coaches often say, get guys to where they can play without thinking, and they can then play at full speed. Nowadays, I'm seeing people bail on Joe Douglas' draft class of this year. 3 games. Old standard, 3 years. New standard, 3 games. It's getting a little bit ridiculous. That's not to say there aren't some concerns with Joe Douglas' drafting, because while it's not really fair to pass judgment on a class as a whole this quickly. However, you do want to see some signs. You do want to see some progress. You do want to see guys do some things early on that make you believe, okay, I see what this guy could become. I get why they took him. I see the flashes. But let's take a look real quick. So Joe Douglas last year, his first draft as a Jets GM, he takes Mekhi Becton, currently on IR, missed all or part of 8 games last year. Serious injury red flags at this point. Okay? Denzel Mims, we're not going to get into that in depth right now. The previous videos do it. We did it last night on Jet Nation Radio, myself and Alex Varallo. The guy needs to be on the field. But we're gonna talk about that. Ashton Davis, hurt, not on the field. Jabari Zuniga, practice squad material right now. LaMichael Pirine, hurt, can't get on the field. James Morgan, he's a member of the Carolina Panthers. Cam Clark, hurt, can't get on the field. Bryce Hall, looks like an young, up-and-coming, upper echelon type corner. And then, of course, Braden Mann, punter. So you've got Becton, you've got Davis, you've got Pirine, you've got Clark. All these guys have missed significant time due to injury. So this is a philosophical thing, and this is what we discussed last night on Jet Nation Radio, is do you hold the GM accountable when he drafts a player who can't stay healthy? My personal perspective, if there's not a significant, lengthy injury history in college, I'm not putting that on the GM. He doesn't have a crystal ball, and it's NFL football. Guys get hurt. It's terrible luck. Listen, nobody disliked John Idzik more than I did, okay? And he took a lot of heat for drafting D. Milner, who had injuries in college. But Idzik wasn't wrong when he said Milner never missed a game in college. Bumps and bruises, nicks and scrapes, whatever. Came to the pros, got far more serious injuries. You can't predict these things. Adrian Peterson once shattered his collarbone diving into the end zone. Do you then not draft him? Sometimes there are freak injuries that occur. Sometimes a guy gets nicked up once or twice, and then he's fine after that. So to say that this first draft class is a flop because Joe Douglas drafted a bunch of guys who are injured, some of these guys had minor stuff in college, but I'm not holding a GM accountable for the fact that an NFL football player got injured playing NFL football. A good example, now, if you want to talk about the previous GM, who, yes, I supported for way too long. If you want to talk about Mike McCagnon drafting Blake Cashman, and Cashman hasn't been able to stay healthy since, and he had significant injuries in college. Now you could say high upside for Cashman. They rolled the dice and took him later in the draft. That risk-reward thing. Okay, I get the logic, but you still drafted a guy who was hurt a lot in college or had, multiple shoulder surgeries. So I don't hold Joe Douglas accountable for the fact that guys get hurt playing football, because he didn't draft a bunch of guys who had significant injury histories. You know, Mims had a broken hand in college at one point. It's a broken bone, it heals, it's fine. But again, and I said in the offseason, I said I was surprised at how few people were talking about the amount of time Mekhi Becton missed last season. Like I said, all are part of 8 games. And you didn't know. Was that on the coaches for rushing him back too quickly? Some of those games he played the majority and he left very late in the game, so they weren't that much of a red flag. But I felt like there was enough there for a person who's built like Mekhi Becton. Listen, Jets fans love the guy. Well, most of us do. Part of the reason we love him is because the guy's a mountain. But human beings generally aren't meant to be that big. And he is, and I hope he gets better. I hope he gets better and plays at a level that's expected. But I'm not holding that against Joe Douglas. Ashton Davis broke his foot or whatever foot injury he had. I'm not holding that against Joe Douglas. So we've got an entire draft class, or almost an entire draft class, that we still need to see. You know, these were not just a rookie class. We're talking about a rookie class who didn't get a camp, didn't get a preseason, and had arguably the worst coach this team has ever seen. So I don't know what the expectation could have been for these guys. And let's not forget undrafted rookie Bryce Huff. Nice find. So then you move forward to this year's draft class where people are already again, 3 games. And there are people saying, this guy can't draft. Look at his draft history. Yeah, his draft history is 19 games old. So let's relax. Zach Wilson. 3 games coming out of BYU. The kid's going to need time. But as some of you saw the other day, adjusted completion percentage when you take into account for the drops, the spikes, the throwaways to avoid pressure, 70% completion, or 70% on target, right? Adjusted completion percentage, 70%. That's not bad at all, especially if you go back and watch the film. He was dealing with a lot of tight coverage, didn't have huge windows, and still 70% adjusted completion percentage. Elijah Vera Tucker, he's played 3 games. It's almost silly to go through this because these guys have only played 3 games. But people are, again, saying that we have a GM who can't draft. We have a GM who might not be able to draft. We don't know yet. You don't know anything after 16 games for one group most of which didn't even play 16 games, and then 3 games into year 2 for them, and 3 games into the rookie class of this year. So let's pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, be critical, absolutely. Joe Douglas, as I said, this is not to say he hasn't dropped the ball in places. He neglected tight end. Croft, to me, would have been a nice 2 if you'd stuck with Herndon. And I know Herndon hasn't done anything in Minnesota, but he hasn't had the shot. I've told people a million times, go back and watch the final 7-8 games last year. Chris Herndon, different player. He looked like the Chris Herndon of his rookie year. No drops, scored a few touchdowns, a few acrobatic catches. Looked like he was going to have a bounce back year. And then you trade him for a 4th. Fine. You must have, grand ideas of what Tyler Croft is capable of. Croft and Griffin, terrible, terrible 1-2 punch. That's on Joe Douglas. The interior offensive line, I think the Cam Clark thing muddies the waters a little bit on that. I think the expectation was that Cam Clark would emerge as a starter this season at some point. Spinal injury, now we don't know his future. Van Roten's terrible. However, that doesn't excuse Joe Douglas for signing Dan Feeney. As I said last night, Dan Feeney, probably the one signing this team made that from the second it was made, I was baffled. I just thought, why did you just add this guy? He's not a quality player. So even as bad as Van Roten is, I don't think you're doing any better if you plug Feeney in there. So this is not an opportunity to sit down and say Joe Douglas has done no wrong. I think, unfortunately, one of the biggest problems is that the most talented group Joe Douglas has put together on this team, you could argue, is it the D-line or is it the receiver group? He's put together a team that, when healthy, is legitimately 5-6 deep at wide receiver. You have some really good players. Problem with that, you've got an offensive coordinator who wants to run 2 tight end sets constantly, and you're only seeing 3 receiver sets. You go 4 or 5 receivers more often, get Denzel Mims on the field, get Crowder back healthy, you're going to have mismatches all over the field. But I just don't think that's something we're going to see under Mike LaFleur, because he's going to run Croft and Griffin out there. and they're going to line up at tight end, and they're going to line up at wide receiver, and the receivers aren't going to play. So you've built a very deep group of receivers for an offense that isn't going to use that to their advantage, or at least that's what it appears at this point. So you can go in on some of these picks. The Zuniga pick, the James Morgan pick. These were probably my least favorite picks when they were made, and it does look as if Morgan's gone. Zuniga, and listen, here's the thing with Zuniga. Okay, again, not giving up on guys too soon. But if there's one guy in this whole group that I would say probably isn't going to make it, it's him. Why do I say that? This is a guy who was a premium pick, 79th overall, and just 1 year after going in the top 100, and he plays a premium position as a pass rusher, he was let go and 31 other teams passed on him. When 32 teams, the Jets being the first, they dump him, and 31 other teams say, no thanks, not interested. For a player at a premium position who has only had 1 year in the league and was picked in the top 100, that is a huge red flag. So he passed through waivers. Nobody picked him up. The Jets snatched him back up, put him on the practice squad. Maybe it works out. I don't know. I don't know if Zuniga's going to work out. I would bet on no, but again, he's got a year and a little bit to show what he can do, or he's had that. So P. Ryan's been hurt. Cam Clark is hurt. All these guys are dinged up. We've already covered that. Zach Wilson, AVT, he's going to need time. He's had moments where you see, what I was saying a few minutes ago. You want to see flashes of, okay, that's when that guy can do that thing more consistently, we're going to have a player here. And that's what you've seen from AVT. You've seen some mental lapses. Elijah Moore, that guy's just not getting targeted enough. I mentioned last night, ESPN Next Gen Stats said Elijah Moore had more separation than any other receiver on average than any other receiver on the roster the other day. Over 4 yards separation. But we're trying to squeeze the ball into Corey Davis constantly. At some point, you got to start targeting. Elijah Moore's the guy. If you got a guy getting 10 targets a game, it should be Elijah Moore. I'm not putting that one on Joe Douglas. And again, it's 3 games. Michael Carter has looked very good at running back. No issues there. Jamie Sherwood, another one of 2 guys who played safety in college, converting to linebacker. They're going to need time. They're 3 games in. Michael Carter II has looked pretty damn good in the slot, hasn't he? And that's a 5th round pick. Hamza Nasruddin, he's starting. He's going to need some time. Brandon Eccles so far has probably been my favorite guy of the group in terms of how well he has performed. Again, critical position. And we're talking about a 6th round pick who goes number 200 overall. He's forced into starting action because this group just doesn't have much talent. We haven't seen much from Jason Pinnock, who was taken earlier than him. But Eccles has looked good. So again, but it's early. And believe me, I understand as well as anybody, Jets fans are tired of losing. It's a decade of no playoffs. There will be no playoffs this year. There may not be playoffs next year. And that's why we don't want to hear it. There's nothing worse as a Jets fan, especially if you've been a fan for 15, 20, 25, 30 years. I'm on year 34. Nothing worse than someone telling you, hey man, just be patient. Like, yeah, I think we've been pretty patient. We're still buying the gear. We're still going to games. We're still watching, rooting, cheering after decades of mostly bad football. But take a step back and look at the big picture and understand that the GM has drafted 2 draft classes and one has played 3 games. Now, why is this important? I'm not, it's not as if the fans have a say. We're not going to jump in and fire Joe Douglas. But why is it important that Joe Douglas work out? There's the obvious. You can't keep hiring and firing GMs. But the big thing with Joe Douglas, and this was a brief conversation I had in our forums the other day with a fellow Jets fan. Joe Douglas, he's supposed to be the guy. Okay, we've had bad GM after bad GM after bad GM. These guys don't find talented players. Players rarely see a second contract with the Jets. A lot of them are out of the league in a hurry. Okay, Mack did it. Idzik did it. Tannenbaum had some hits, but that was largely Bradway and Eric Mangini evaluating the talent for him. Joe Douglas, I can't recall the last time the Jets brought in a GM with a resume as strong as the resume Joe Douglas had. He cut his teeth under Ozzie Newsome, right? Hall of Fame GM, and he spent, what, 15 years under Ozzie Newsome? Everyone thought we all saw him on Hard Knocks. He worked his way all the way up, started at the bottom, and worked his way all the way up to where he was a team president or the assistant to the team president in Philly with the Eagles. So he cuts his teeth under Ozzie, spends a year or two in Chicago, goes to the Eagles, they win a Super Bowl, and then I'm sure no move can be made without someone being critical of it. But you would be hard pressed to find a prominent voice in NFL circles who was critical of the Jets hiring Joe Douglas. Universally, this was the hire. He was the guy. They finally got it right. It wasn't an overhire like McCagnon. It wasn't a budget guy like John Idzik, a number cruncher who didn't know how to scout players. This was a guy who had worked at every level under arguably the best GM in the NFL for well over a decade. And there were people saying not only did the Jets get their guy, they did it at the right time. As much as we criticized the timing of letting Mac run a draft and run a free agency and then firing him, there were plenty of people who said this was the time for the Jets to do this because there are going to be multiple teams chasing Joe Douglas this offseason. The Jets fired their GM. They're the only team in the market for a GM. They got exclusive ability to negotiate with Joe Douglas, and that's what helped seal the deal. So this was universally praised because of his pedigree, because of his history, because of the success the teams he worked with had, because of the fact he worked under Ozzie Newsome. And I think to suggest the team throw that away or to close the book on Douglas at this point is ridiculous. But again, that's not to say he hasn't made some pretty big mistakes. Again, as I said, no tight ends, no guards. I shouldn't say no guards. You got AVT, but even corner, you can say give him at least early on. He kind of gets a pass because these corners are playing well. They're playing at a high level. Bryce Hall, that was a great pick. A lot of teams passed on him because of the injury. Joe Douglas snags him. And now you have Eccles playing well, and more to come, more picks next year. So basically, my point is, let's not rewrite or let's not radically change the way we look at a GM. Let's be sensible. 3 years for a draft class, and if your guys are still bombing, if everyone's still hurt, and if the guys who are in there aren't playing well, and the guys who are approaching year 3 are also not showing any signs, fine. Then it's time to worry. It's time for it to be concerned about what you've got. But right now you have a GM who's got 2 draft classes, one of which is 3 games in. All right, let's relax a little bit. Let these guys get on the field. Let them play. This is not me saying that it's all going to work out. It might get worse from here. Wholly acknowledge that. No crystal ball. I'm just saying let's be a little bit more measured. As frustrating as it is, and as hard as it is as a Jets fan, like I said, this is year 34, 35 for me. This team usually produces a poor product, and that's what we've got again. But let's give these young kids a shot to come along and see where they go from here. That's it for me for this one. Like I said, check us out. Go to the forums, jetnation.com, and join the conversations. Plenty Jets fans in there. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of hits every month. Have a great one, Jets fans.